Gentlemen, welcome back to the People's Law School. This is a great honor and privilege for me to be here and to present to you on behalf of the lawyers of Alabama, the trial lawyers, who in my opinion, I say this and the others get mad, but they're the real lawyers. They're the ones in the courtroom that really are where the rubber meets the road. And tonight we have another lawyer from Tuscaloosa. You have met one of his partners. You'll meet another one later. He's from the law firm of Prince, Glover, and Hayes. There's more than just those three men in the courtroom, but you've met Mr. Hayes, and I want you to know, I'm sure we've all been impressed with him. Now you're going to meet the one who is, in addition to being a lawyer, he's also a basketball coach. So you'll meet Matt Glover in just 1 second. Matt Glover is an outstanding man. He's from West Virginia, and he was president of his class there at Marshall, and has won all kind of accolades over the years. And now that he's in Tuscaloosa, he lives there. And I always mention this, Bobby Prince, their senior partner, taught at the law school for 20 years or so, and what he did as he was going through is he cherry-picked the best students. And so he got Mr. Hayes and he got Mr. Glover to be in his law firm, and that's why when you later meet Mr. Prince, I want y'all to know he's not that smart, but he was there. He was absolutely there to pick up these brilliant people, Mr. Hayes and Mr. Glover. Mr. Glover and his wife Holly have 3 boys. They're very active at the First Baptist Church, and in fact, he's on the Catholic school board there. They're very active in their community. But the best thing that Mr. Glover does is he tries cases and he defends the poor, the downtrodden, and the oppressed. And I am so glad to have him in the profession that I do because he makes us all proud when he takes a case. And I know that you'll have that same opinion here in about an hour. My privilege tonight to present to you Mr. Matt Glover. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That basketball comment's kind of a joke. I do coach basketball. I've got 3 boys, and they all love basketball. It's kind of what we do together. And I'm proud to say I got a perfect record this year. I coached the 8-year-old, and perfect record wasn't a single blemish. Downside to that was it was perfect that we lost every game. There was no wins. And the last game, my son kind of looked over at me, and I could tell he had something to say. He said, "Dad, I think we need a new coach." So I got over it, and I got an extension on my contract, so I'm going to give it 1 more year. So I enjoyed doing that. But I really enjoy being an attorney. And let me just tell you a little bit about myself for a moment. I did grow up in West Virginia. And in a lot of ways, that shaped who I am. I didn't really understand it and realize it and appreciate it at the time. But growing up, it was tough to not understand why my dad wasn't always around in the evenings to do some of the things that we did as a family. I thought it was quite a hassle at times that he had to get ready to go to work and be at the coal mines at 11 o'clock, and so quite naturally that meant sometimes missing out on school programs, and occasionally it meant missing out on the last few innings of ball games. But as I got a little bit older and as I heard some of the things that my dad would say because he was on the mine safety rescue team, I began to realize that this is kind of a tough and dangerous job that he had. And as I got a little bit older, I started to wonder, now is this going to be the night that my dad becomes one of those people that are injured or even worse? And so when I got to law school, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew if I could just get through law school that I wanted to represent people who had been injured or people specifically that had been injured on the job, or even worse, families that have to go through the trauma of experiencing the loss of a loved one. Growing up, and I'm going to talk about some of this in a little bit, my dad would often keep photographs around the house or around his office, and when I would go there, he was always quick to remind me of photographs like this. Now, this one in particular was not one of the ones that he had where he kind of kept his desk and all that. But it was a reminder that, look, your grandfather did this and his dad did this. and I've done this, and I sure hope you don't have to do this. But realize that no matter what you do in life, that your job is probably going to be a lot easier than some of those who have gone before you. But don't forget what it was like to grow up in this household and to hear some of the stories that you've heard. So tonight, I want to talk about that because for the last 12 years, I've made a point to represent people who are injured. And some of them are people who are, in fact, injured on the job. Now, I'll begin tonight by saying this. The title is Industrial Accidents. But as you're going to find out, and hopefully I'll be able to convince you of this during our time together, is that when I say the word accidents, I'm not really convinced that most of the time it is an accident because of some of the things that we are going to talk about tonight. Well, let me tell you about 2012. All the figures haven't come out from 2013 yet, so you'll have to forgive me for being a little bit behind on the statistics. But in 2012, approximately 4,000 people in the United States lost their lives as a result of an incident that occurred on the job. 4,000 people. Now that is down from the numbers in the 70s. And I know that when you think about the population as a whole, perhaps 4,000 doesn't sound like that huge of a number. But I can assure you, for a lot of people, the loss of life meant everything in the world. So here are, and I'm not going to cover all these, but some of the most dangerous professions. And there are statistics about of 100,000 people who perform that particular occupation, how many people die. Number 10 are those who work in construction. I actually thought it would have been closer to the top in terms of one of the most dangerous jobs. But approximately 17.4 out of every 100,000 people who perform construction-type work will die in any given year as a result of the work that they perform. Most of the time, it's due to either being crushed, hit by equipment, or tragically falling. I'm not going to cover all these. I think some of you can see. Those who work on power lines. You know, this evening will be an example of that across the state. Many of us, when we're spending time warm in the bed and the power goes off and there's trucks that have to go out and take care of those conditions, that's a dangerous job. And every year in the United States, approximately 23 out of every 100,000 people who work for power companies, who work on power lines, will be electrocuted and will die as a result of the work they perform. One of the things that I notice is that the top 10 most dangerous professions of the United States are people who make approximately $30,000 to $35,000. Now there are some exceptions. There are some of those jobs that allow for significant overtime. But what you'll see later in the presentation is that for a lot of companies, this becomes a statistic, a way of measuring what it will cost us to have a fatality in our workplace. Some of the most dangerous jobs are people who are working for $30,000 and $35,000 a year. The most dangerous profession in the United States is actually that of being a logger. You know, people who go out and actually do the actual cutting down of the trees that are used to make all the things that we enjoy in life. And if you compare it against all the other occupations from 2012, it's not even close. For every 100,000 loggers, 128 every given year will die. It's not even close to any other occupation, and most of the time it's either because accidental use of equipment or because of a tree falling on someone. And it's also one of the most unregulated industries, which is one of the subjects that that we'll talk about tonight. All right. I hate to talk about statistics. I mean, because the statistics of it just absolutely seem to dehumanize the reality. I mean, I guarantee there was somebody who heard me say 4,000 people died in 2012, and you start thinking about how many millions of people who live in the United States, and you say 4,000 people, you know, I don't know any of those people, so it doesn't sound like that big of a number. Now, this was a note that I saw, and it's hard to read, and it's not because of the clarity of the presentation, but I want to talk about the circumstances surrounding this particular note. I live in the Tuscaloosa area, and so when I was actually in law school, we had an incident that I was unfortunately too familiar with because I had grown up hearing my dad talk about those type of incidents, and that was the fatalities that occurred at the Brookwood Mines in Tuscaloosa County, at the Jim Walters mine there, when several people died in 2000, I believe it was 2001, September of 2001, as a result of an explosion in the mine. Well, right after that, it was actually a couple days after the middle son, the one who wanted to fire me as the basketball coach, when he was born, that there was another explosion back in West Virginia, close to where I grew up, and that was the Sago mine disaster that occurred in January of 2006. And this note was written at the Sago mines. Approximately 12 people died in the Sago mine explosion in West Virginia. One person did survive. This note was written by one of the workers who died that night. Now, again, we can think about it being a statistic if we want, but I want you to think about for just a moment what it would have been like to draft this note. I mean, you're writing a note to your wife, you're writing a note to your children, you're writing a note to your parents, and you know that the note that you're writing is one that's going to be read when you're no longer alive. So as we talk about this subject tonight, I don't want us to think about industrial accidents as a statistic. I want us to try to think about, as we cover some of the material tonight, the reality of what happens in the families that it in fact impacts. Now, I told you that I'm reluctant to call it an accident. And I mistakenly throw that term around too. After 12 years of practicing law, occasionally I'll make a mistake and I'll say the word accident, because an accident is really a term that has been used a lot in what we do, but it's used by the other side, because an accident implies that it was unfortunate, that it was not foreseeable, that it basically happened and nobody could possibly anticipate it. After all, accidents happen. We've heard that phrase. And so when the other side in cases, when the insurance industry talks about accidents, that term is a term we're familiar with, because to us, we've all been involved in accidents. You know, an accident happened when I bumped someone in front of me. An accident happened when I forgot my glasses outside and someone ran over them. An accident happened when I forgot my ball glove at the field. An accident happens. My kids have accidents all the time. And so when we talk about accidents in relation to people dying, we can't help but think, well, those things happen. It was unforeseeable. It was unanticipated. Well, I want you to ask yourself, as we cover some of the material tonight, is that really an accident? Okay? So let's begin with, you'll note I like to stay on the coal mining theme. This was in 2010. It was actually, and just to remind people here and people watching, I mean, we got a lot of coal miners in the state of Alabama. We often hear that, you know, West Virginia is a state where there's a tremendous number of coal miners, and there are. There's a lot of coal miners in the state of Alabama. This is one that occurred in 2010 in the southern part of West Virginia, where basically 2 out of every 3 families is involved in the coal mining industry. And it was another explosion. Now look, I talked about 3 explosions already. One in Sago, West Virginia, one in Brookwood, Alabama, and now one at the Performance Coal, which is owned by Massey Coal, which is actually a publicly traded company, okay? Explosions. Now, 3 explosions at 3 different mines. I'm starting to think that explosions are not accidents. It sounds like that's something you have to anticipate in a coal mine, and we know why. But it is a foreseeable event. Now, after this explosion, which, by the way, killed 29 people, well, there wasn't a single person that survived the explosion at the Massey coal plant in West Virginia. It was investigated. Now, I want you to think about this for just a second. Now, before the investigation was concluded, the coal company approached every single family and offered them what appears to be a substantial amount of money, $3 million a family. Fortunately, many of the families said no. And in part, that led to additional investigation into the circumstances of the Performance Coal Massey plant in West Virginia. And based upon the investigation that was published to the community, I want to cover some of the things that the investigating unit concluded about that particular accident. It says that Massey failed to perform certain inspections, and when they did inspections, they often failed to remedy the conditions that were noted. You know, that happens a lot. Okay, I can tell you that every company in America has got some kind of policy for addressing workplace safety. I guarantee you can go to the safety manager, you can ask to see their safety policy, they'll pull it off the shelf, it'll look nice, it'll be detailed, you would think, because you'll see a logo that says safety first, you'll say this is a company that values safety, all right? And they'll have some type of protocol about how they're going to address dangerous conditions in the workplace. And Massey had that policy. And Massey would occasionally do inspections. And Massey would occasionally note unsafe conditions. That is very common. But what is also common is that many times the company will note an unsafe condition, or an unsafe condition will be made known to it by a labor union or a worker who is concerned about the condition, and then the response from the company will be a little bit different than the logo. And we know why, right? I mean, we can say safety first, but the reason why many of the conditions are not addressed is because there is a dollar attached to correcting a condition. No, I know. I mean, you're saying, look, it's plaintiff lawyer. You know, we'd expect him to say that, right? You know, it sounds like you want to take away every company in America. Where would everybody work? Look, I got it. I got it. But what I want to do is I want to show you, because that's pretty, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world, right? Everybody can relate to that. I want you to look at a couple more examples from this investigation that led to 29 people losing their life. They kept 2 sets of books. Now, we're going to, because I know what we're thinking is, look, there are government agencies out there. Hey, look, we've got police officers that drive down the street. If they see a crime occurring at the 7-Eleven, they're going to address it. That's what police officers do. Unfortunately, if they see somebody driving too fast, they're going to pull them over and give them a ticket. That's what police officers do, right? You're out on the lake, you're doing something you're not supposed to do, light comes on, and they got police officers on boats. You know, but we've got other agencies that are supposed to regulate. We've heard of OSHA, right? Well, yeah, OSHA's out there. They're regulating the industry. They're going to confront unsafe conditions. Well, everybody knows that OSHA's going to pop up here and there, right? We keep 2 sets of books. We keep the set of books where we detect unsafe conditions or unsafe conditions that have been brought to our knowledge, and we try to figure out how much will it cost to address those conditions. Oh, those are too expensive. They don't make this book over here. Oh, OSHA, hey, good to see you. Here's the book we have. Here are the conditions that we plan to correct. After all, safety first. You know? That was the conclusion. 2 set of books. One with the really bad stuff that leads to explosions. You know, the other stuff that can be easily corrected with perhaps revamping our policies a little bit. Failed to provide adequate training. Training costs money, right? Sending people down in the mines, explosive materials, explosive gases. We give them some training. We don't give them enough. Hey, we've got some inspectors coming in. I want everybody, look, we got the inspectors coming in next Tuesday. All right, everybody, inspectors are coming in next Tuesday. So Monday we're going to take a little bit of time and we're going to get the mines ready because the inspectors are coming on Tuesday, right? And the conclusion was we got advance notice. First off, why are they getting advance notice? And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But there was a problem there that the investigation concluded, and that was that the government entity called MSHA was a little bit too cozy with Massey Coal. I mean, you know how that works, right? I mean, this is not some mom and pop coal operation. They got lots of money, which means, you know, when they got the golf tournament at the Greenbrier, guess who gets invited? When they got a football game in the Skybox, guess who gets invited? When they have deer camp, guess who gets invited? Hey, advance notice, we got the inspection coming up on Tuesday. Don't worry, we got the books ready for you. That happens, and 29 people die. Is it an accident? I know, again, you're saying, look, plaintiff lawyer, you got one example. You found one in your home state. Congratulations. Y'all remember this car? Yeah, the Pinto. Not a good car, you know, without a doubt. Yeah, at some point, somebody thought it was a good car. Yeah, and the problem with the Pinto was what? The placement of the fuel tank. Hey, by the way, just so before you start thinking, look, that's from the 70s, and whenever people drove Pintos. You start looking around, there's fuel tanks on the outside of vehicles now. Every time you pass a rig on the interstate, that big thing on the side, that's a fuel tank. And I know you're thinking there's probably diesel in there. Some of them have diesel. Some of them have gas. Pinto had bad placement of a fuel tank, right? Now, what does this have to do with industrial accidents? Because remember, I suggested to you that companies like Massey Coal, they sit there and they think, look, okay, we got a dangerous condition. We value safety. Safety first. That's our logo. But the bean counters have looked at it and said, this is what it's going to cost to remedy that unsafe condition. You know, accountant fella, tell me how much it's going to cost to fix that. Okay, well, that's when you really figure out how much you value safety. Pinto. Fatality starts occurring. Injuries start occurring. Ford gets sued, right? You know, lawyers like myself out there are suing Ford Motor Company saying that's a bad design. Because, by the way, it wasn't the U.S. government that first approached Ford and said, hey, you got a bad design, even though there's a whole agency out there that addresses it. It was actually lawyers who do what we do, saying, look, we got a family here, they lost a loved one, bad design, we're putting you on notice. Well, Ford started receiving notices, one after another. Well, what's the decision? Now, look, they're engineers. They know this is a bad design at some point, right? They've got their crash test facilities in Dearborn, Michigan. They got them out in California. They're running crash tests, and they're saying, you know what, son of a gun, bad design. Now, what's our options? We got folks like Matt Glover down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who is filing suit against us. What are our options? Oh, I know what we could do. We could fix that. Got a problem there. We've made a bunch of those Ford Pintos. And now, how much is that recall? Where's the bean counter? How much is the recall going to cost us? Because we're going to have to move the fuel tank, right? I mean, we've sold a lot of these. We've made a lot of money selling the Pinto. So what do we do? Now, look, this is not a document that was published by Ford Motor Company. This is not a document that the U.S. government said, hey, I want y'all to know what's going on at Ford Motor Company, all right? This is a document that was obtained by a lawyer. And it wasn't, before we began tonight, Al was talking about cases, and you spend a lot of money on cases. And I know y'all realize this, but it's not like you say, hey, look, I'm representing this family. They've died. They had a loved one die as a result of an explosion. You've designed that Ford Pinto. Do you mind to give us all your internal memos on, the recognition that you had that this was a dangerous... Oh, sure, we got those boxed up right here. You want us to bring them to you? We'll even pay the cost of copying. You don't get it that way. You get objection, that's not relevant. Objection, you're asking for stuff outside the state of Alabama. Objection, you're asking for documents that are greater than 5 years old. Objection, 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 objection. At some point, you got to say, look, we've got to go to court and figure this out. Some judges look at it and say, yeah, we agreed for it. Some say, yeah, we kind of agree with you, but we're going to limit the number of documents you can get. Well, finally, there was a breakthrough. Finally, somebody inside a Ford Motor Company who had had enough stepped up and said, I want to tell you exactly what they've done with the Ford Pinto. They went through this analysis. This is the bean counters, okay? Because I'm going to attach this to industrial accidents. How much do you think it would cost us if we hired the best lawyers and we fight them off the best we can and we pay the families? How much is that going to cost us? Well, that sounds like a lot of money. Okay, well, we got a logo after all. How much is it going to cost us to recall the product and fix the defective condition? Oh, whoa, that's a lot more than paying the families. We'll just pay the families. Well, that's not good. But I guarantee you somewhere they've got logos all over the place about safety first. I know, you're saying plaintiff lawyer, okay, you've given us two examples. You found one from your home state and you found one from the 70s. Surely you can find something a little bit closer to Alabama and closer to our day and time. Well, all you got to do is turn on the TV to know about the BP cases, right? Y'all remember the BP case? Man, it was on the news every single day. Another example of exactly what I'm talking about. Now, what happened was, there's a lot of debate about what caused the condition, what caused the explosion, what caused the fatality, what caused the... I can't even tell you how much oil was pumped into the other. A lot, to quantify it. There was an investigation. And there were conclusions reached in that investigation. Now, let me show you some of the conclusions, okay? This is closer to home, right? All right, now, the government agency is responsible for inspecting. You're supposed to inspect these companies in advance. The government agency responsible for investigating. Look, it's not really convenient to pop out in the ocean and take a look at the Deepwater Horizon, right? Well, 16 times they failed to get out there to do the inspection. Now, look, I can't tell you why they failed to get out there. All I can tell you is the investigation concluded that BP was pretty close. I just told y'all how that happens, right? It happens every given Saturday during college football season, right? Those college skyboxes. You think they just invite people to those skyboxes like executives from those companies because they want to watch a football game with them? 16 inspections missed. But look at this. Leading up to the Deepwater Horizon, 30 BP, this is before the Deepwater Horizon. In the few years leading up to that, 30 different BP workers were killed in 2 incidents. And BP paid, good for BP, they paid $373 million in fines. That sounds like a lot of money. That is a lot of money, but not to BP. In the very quarter when the Deepwater Horizon occurred, look at the profit. This isn't revenue. This is profit. $2 billion. Profit. So here's the analysis. You're sitting there and you're saying, look, whether it's dangerous conditions in a coal mine, dangerous conditions in a steel plant, a Pinto, whatever, at some point, companies do this. What will it cost us to pay the fines? What will it cost us to pay the lawyers? What will it cost us to pay the claims? What will it cost us to address the dangerous conditions? All I'm suggesting to you is this. When a company goes through that analysis and it says we're going to pay the cost of lawsuits, fines, claims, bad media, instead of paying the cost of what it would take to remedy a dangerous condition, that's not an accident. Remember, an accident is something that is unanticipated. It's not foreseeable. When companies are doing this type of calculation and saying, we'll take our chance, that is not an accident. Now, in Alabama, we're different in a lot of ways, all right? Mostly good. One way that I really like the fact that we're different is the way that we view human life in the state of Alabama. If somebody dies in the state of Georgia, for example, and let's just say they're a neurosurgeon. You know, they're driving their S-Class Mercedes, and they die. And the neurosurgeon, I'm going to be careful what I say here. Let's just say, so you're assuming the neurosurgeon was a male. No, it's a female neurosurgeon, right? It's got a man at the house, 3 kids. All of them got blonde hair, good-looking kids. All right? Neurosurgeon dies. Well, case goes to trial. Jury gets to hear, what about the neurosurgeon? How much does the neurosurgeon make? Now, I really don't know. I'm not a neurosurgeon. But I hear they make a lot of money. You know, $2 million, Atlanta got to make $2 million a year. Jury here and says, you know what? That lady neurosurgeon, she made $2 million a year. She was 38 years old. She's got 3 kids. What is her life worth? A big number. They got it so big you got to call economists to come in and talk about how big that number is, right? And they asked the jury for, $57 million, current dollar figures. Same type accident, but the guy's out of work. Lost his job 6 months ago. Been unemployed for 6 months. Doesn't have a child. He's got a mom he helps take care of here and there. He rents an apartment. No big mortgage or anything like that. Dies in the same accident in Georgia. Goes in front of the jury. Jury says, well, how much did he make? Well, he's unemployed. Well, when he was working, well, he hit this job and hit that job. He was making minimum wage, and minimum wage has changed here and there, but he's a little below the poverty line. Mortgage payment? Nope, no mortgage payment. They let him out of his lease. Children? No children. Now look, what happens? Jury verdict comes out in Georgia. Neurosurgeon, blonde-haired kids, $57 million. Guy who didn't have a job, $75,000. Now that doesn't sound right to me. Here's where Alabama is different, and it's different for the good. In Alabama, what the law is in wrongful death cases, and what that means is someone dies, it can be on the job, it can be in a car wreck, is we view all life equal. Everyone's life equal. Whether you're 86, whether you're 2, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're a neurosurgeon, whether you're a plumber, whether you got 3 kids, no kids, doesn't matter. In Alabama, our wrongful death statute is we value all life. And because of that, in wrongful death cases, you're entitled to one type of damage and one type of damage only. And that's called punitive damages. You heard of that before? You know, for the longest time, I was uncomfortable even saying it. I mean, it just sounds bad. Punitive damage, because the word that first comes to mind is what? Punish. Punitive. Punish. And most of us, we don't like to punish, right? Heck, you can watch my kids at the mall. I don't like to punish. You can tell that from time to time. But what we're more comfortable with is the real purpose of punitive damages, and that is to deter conduct, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Whether it happens again from you, we want other people to know this kind of conduct can't happen again, and if it does, there's going to be consequences for that. Well, so what's the standard? Well, in death cases, you automatically get asked for punitive damages. In non-death cases, it, in large part, in injury, turns on whether the conduct rises to the level of wantonness. And here's a description. I pulled it out of we got law books, case law, statutory codes. Here's what it is. If there's a conscious doing, I consciously decide I'm going to do something, knowing what the consequences may be. It's a conscious disregard, whether through my act or my omission. So, here's what I'm getting at. On one hand, you have the concept known as accidents. They're not foreseeable, they just happen, everybody has them, Mama had them all the time. On the other hand, you got wanton conduct, a conscious disregard. Now, at least in the three examples that I've talked about here so far, BP, Massey, and the Ford Pinto, I think you're beginning to agree with me that, look, those don't really seem like accidents. Those seem more like the results of conscious decision, where you know the risk and you decide to go down that road anyway. Right? All right. Now, remember, one of the things I said is, well, don't we have like law enforcement out there? I mean, it's great that you do this, but I mean, we got police officers that catch the bad guys. Don't we have government agencies that kind of, I know you've given us a couple examples, but don't we have government agencies that kind of keep employers in check, keep these industrial settings safe? Because look, I'm just assuming my uncle who goes out there to the steel plant every day, it's a safe operation, right? They got people who do inspections. I want to talk about that for a minute. And what I want to talk about is an example that I've used in the past. It's actually from one of my cases. All right? You all have seen these before. You may not have seen them in this configuration. But you've seen them on the back of a truck. Matter of fact, I guarantee you, tomorrow, if the roads aren't that bad, and you get out there on the interstate, and you drive 2 miles on the interstate, and you just take the time to look around, you're going to see these, all right? Steel coils. You know, they make things, right? These that you're looking at, they were actually used to make the exhaust pipes on the back of vehicles and the tubing in boilers, all right? They're everywhere. And they come in coils, and they're heavy. And you see them on the back of the truck, all right? They're not supposed to look like this. This is, and if you look closely, you can see where this is I was about to say accident site. I just about said accident. It's not an accident site, all right? I'm not going to say that because of what I'm about to show you. This is where someone is on the back of their trailer, okay? The steel coils are being loaded onto the trailer up in Detroit. They're going to haul these back to the south. And the coils, while they're being loaded by an overhead crane, bring the coils in, they set the coils, and they fall over. Now look, those coils are a lot thinner than the ones that you see on most trucks. They're usually kind of wide. These are pretty tall and thin, about 6 foot tall, about 6 inches wide apiece. Tall, thin coils. Truck driver, the company's provided this diagram here, which is very common. You get a diagram. Here's how you're supposed to load these things. Make sure you load it this way. Get there, bringing the coils in. Coils fall over. There's a problem with this. And this particular incident occurred in 2009. This diagram had been around for about a decade. And in about 2004, some folks who were ordering the steel coil said, look, we got truckers bringing them in, loaded into that configuration, but we don't like that. Because when they bring it in like that, these coils, because they're so tall and thin, they have a tendency to shift. right? So we don't want people to do it that way anymore. It's dangerous. Don't do it that way anymore. Except in 2009, there's a safer way to do it, matter of fact. Let's build these special safety racks. That way we don't have to worry about them toppling over. You put those tall, thin coils in there, they can't shift, and if they do shift, you don't have to worry about a truck driver. Okay, 2009, here's the deal. We're sitting there. We have got a customer who wants exhaust pipes real quick. We can make a lot of money. We've got a problem. We don't have any of that tall, thin coils. Well, we need to get some of that stuff. Where is it? Well, the place we usually go doesn't have it, but we found some up in Detroit. Okay, we'll get it. Well, boss man, there's a problem with that. They don't have those racks. You know, those racks are down here in Georgia. We don't usually get our steel up there. Well, we'll lose the customer. Decision, right? I know what our logo says, safety first. But man, on this hand, we can make some money. The worst thing it could do is shift, right? Somebody puts an email, you know, here's what I suggest we do. I suggest we just go back to the diagram. It'll save everybody time and money. Now, that's right out of the case. Now, that government agency called OSHA, they didn't exactly reach the same conclusion. They come out there, you know, truck driver's no longer there. Truck driver can't really say what happened. Nobody's going to say, hey, we got this email, Mr. OSHA man, we want you to see. I'm going to tell you about these safety racks and this decision we made. Shh. You know what? I noticed that truck driver, I don't think he was trained properly. And that truck driver, I don't think he had the right equipment. And that truck driver, he shouldn't have been on the back of that trailer, OSHA man, when they were loading those coils, even though we asked him to be there. Yeah, I agree. Truck driver's fault. You mean the company didn't get fined? Nope. You mean the company that made that decision about saving everybody time? Nope. Did OSHA even know about it? Nope. Now, what do you think they did the next time? All I'm saying is, look, y'all may know some people who work for OSHA and they do great work. But many times, they're not getting the whole story. And many times, because they're underfunded, they're not going through that analysis to try to figure out, are you really trying to improve the workplace? Are you going through calculations? Are you making decisions based upon what's profitable or what is the most safe? All right. Most of our OSHA inspections originate out of Birmingham. And this is the standard no matter whether you're in Birmingham, you're in Huntsville, you're in Des Moines, Iowa, you're in San Francisco, Albany, New York, it doesn't matter. They just don't have as many inspectors as they need. I mean, y'all can imagine that, right? I mean, they're doing budget cuts, and you got a decision to make. You can either build a stealth bomber or you can hire another OSHA investigator. And y'all know which decision's made. And we don't have enough of them. And so they've got to prioritize. And they're really not being proactive because they can't be proactive because they don't have enough manpower, they don't have enough support, they don't have enough time, they're not getting paid enough. And so they come up with a priority system. Here's what we're going to do in terms of the inspections that we make. And you can see they're almost all reactive. They're responding to the workplace after something happens. And then they're capped in the amount of time that they can give an investigation. They don't get to bring the only time they ever get to bring serious investigators and experts is when you've got CNN or Fox News out there covering some fatality, because now you've got the pressure of, look, the public is watching. We better get in there and do a thorough investigation. If it's Joe Schmo who dies at the steel plant and it's on the radio maybe 2 minutes, look, they're not getting a lot of media attention. You got yourself a 3-hour investigation. And let me tell you, from 12 years' experience, Joe Schmo, chances are going to be blamed for what happened. And Joe Schmo's not going to be there because he's just a statistic. When OSHA does come out, there's various violations they can find. Now, this should really get your attention. A serious violation. Now, OSHA's coming into a plant, and they're finding something that, look, substantial probability that this condition can lead to serious injury or death. $7,000 fine. Come on. Do you think for a second that BP is going to flinch at $7,000? They just paid $323 million. BP, you've got a substantial condition here that may lead to death, or it's going to cost you $7,000. Or you can get down there and you can spend $200,000 to fix that condition. I'll let you decide what you think a company may do when faced with that situation. But now look, that's the front end fine. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second. Look, if it's willful, willful means basically you intended the consequences. Or a repeated failure means we've been here before, we've seen this condition, you haven't done anything about it, and here the condition is again. Let's just say they hit them with a $70,000 fine. The way that works is, look, they send you a fine. Let's just say, worst case, they've been there before, it was serious, and now they've been back, and it's there again. They're going $70,000. Now, I don't want you to think that big companies just pull out the checkbook and stroke $70,000 check. That's not the way it works. What they do is they contact their lawyer. They're paying a lawyer $400 an hour, $250, $300. It just depends on the market. They say, look, hey, Rachel, we've got a fine. OSHA wants to hit us for $70,000. We'll spend $5,000 in legal fees with you. We can test it. We don't agree with that. We're not going to pay that. We're going to challenge you. You're going to file a case against us. And they do. And guess what happens? They negotiate it down. $70,000 fee, fine, $2,500. And the main thing is, all they really care about negotiating down is not necessarily the fine as much as is the way the fine was classified. We'll pay $30,000, but we want you to go back in your report and we want you to take it from willful or repeated, and let's knock that down to, is there something we can do less than serious? We'll agree to pay $40,000. We'll get it to you by close of business on Friday, as long as you'll be willing to go. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to make our logo a little bigger, and we're going to train a little more, and deer camp. Look, I've been doing it for 12 years. For 12 years, I've been looking at OSHA reports. And they're out there for the public to see. Freedom of Information Act requests. Get on. Hey, look, nothing to do tomorrow because of the ice. Get on the internet. Look at OSHA's website and track how many times you may have a serious violation, and then they go through the process, and it looks big. You know, $6,500 fine, coupled with a $6,500 fine, coupled with a $5,000 fine. Next thing you know, they got it down to $2,000, and they got a better safety program. As an example, 2004, 2005, people get struck by vehicles on the property at a particular employer. I won't identify the name of the employer, but they got workers there. They got their tractor trailers coming through. Bam, hit somebody. Bam, hit somebody. And you know, when that happens, it's usually either a serious injury or death. We come in, OSHA 2004, 2005, and say, look, y'all have had this happen twice, all right? 2 times we've been out here, and your tractors are hitting people, and so, look, we got to do something about this. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to perform a job hazard analysis, figure out why this is occurring, and what you need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again. You can train your employers more, you can put up lights, you can put up orange vest, this can't happen again. Okay, we'll do it, no problem. 2006, same thing happens. Now, if there was ever a willful or a repeat, this ought to be it. Nope, not at all. Hey, in case you didn't hear us, we'll tell you again, do some hazard analysis, do some more training. Guess what? 2008 happens again. Well, OSHA is investigating the same employer in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Multiple fatalities occur. OSHA makes the same recommendation over and over, and when the last time it happens, guess what the employer paid in a fine? 0. Now, how did that happen? I don't know. But this is look, here's my handout. And I got a fancy little color book here. This is my book. I'm not selling it. It's free. It's free. You can get it off our firm website. I've given you a copy. If you're watching tonight and you want it, look, we spend some time talking about how lawyers, not just us, but how lawyers use the judicial process to hold companies like this accountable. Look, it really bothers me when I drive up here and I see billboards, and the billboards say something like, you know, been in a wreck, need a check. I mean, that really devalues what we do as lawyers. If you go into this saying, look, I want to preserve human life, of course I want to make a living, but I want to do this so that I can make the workplaces better, and I want to hold people accountable like I want them to hold me accountable. Here are some of the techniques. There are things that lawyers can do that government agencies simply can't do. First off, we don't have to conduct an investigation within 3 hours. If a lawyer takes a case, that lawyer says, I'm invested, win or lose. I front the money. If you get a recovery, great. But I'm committing resources, I'm committing staff, I'm committing time. And many times government agencies simply can't do that. We've got the subpoena power of the court. We're able as lawyers to get documents that simply other people cannot get. And you know what? Lawyers, yes, they're annoying, but that annoying is also persistence. And many times that persistence is what causes changes to occur. If you're a small employer, look, I want to give you a couple tips. I'll try to end every presentation with giving a couple tips because, look, I'm part of a business. The biggest problem that we have in workplace injuries right now is prescription drugs. Look, prescription drugs are needed, but you got people taking a lot of prescription medications that they don't need to take and operating heavy equipment. And companies are unfortunately relying upon information like this. It's a medical examination. And believe it or not, some people are not truthful. And so you've got folks out there operating forklifts and cranes and trucks that are absolutely got so much medication in them that they can hardly remember their names. And the drug tests that employers unfortunately are using are drug tests that do not find many of those drugs like sleeping pills and anxiety medication. And so look, if you are a business and you are committed to having a safe workplace, one of the modern trends is very simple. Look, recognize you've probably got employees that are taking prescription medication. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. But you need to make sure you know what prescription medications they're taking, what the effects of those prescription medications are, whether that person should be operating that piece of equipment, and don't just rely upon their representations, and don't just rely upon the post-accident drug test, because you may find yourself in a bad spot and not even realize the dangers that you have. Look, 4,000 is less than 6,000, but still those are 4,000 people that are dying and not the result of accidents. Many times it's the result of conscious disregard for known safety issues. And so I believe that you've got family members who go out there and work. Look, make sure they understand the risk. And as public, if you ever get the opportunity to sit in judgment on a jury, I hope you think about these concepts. And I hope that you too recognize that you play an important role in making our community safer. Okay, any questions?
I want to ask you about this. Would you tell the jury about whether in Alabama you can bring out how much money a company has made in a quarter?
No, you absolutely can't.
In other words, the fact that they made $200 billion in a quarter, you can't even bring it up to the jury because you can't talk about the wealth of the defendant.
Can't talk about the wealth of the parties, which is, you know, I mean, I understand the basis for that, but what we tell juries is, look, you know, you've got to set an amount that you believe will deter this type of conduct. And afterwards, the judge is going to review it, and after that, the appellate courts will have an opportunity to review it. But the problem is, you've got some companies that are simply just so big that what might be used to deter my business is just a cost of doing business for someone else. And so that is, and those laws don't come by just by happenstance. Those laws are the result of court decisions, and many times those court decisions are made, you know, by people who simply don't view the world the way we do. And so you're right, they don't get to introduce that type of evidence.
But there are other state courts that allow such evidence, but Alabama doesn't.
Yeah, Alabama definitely does not. I can't list for you the states that do, and there are probably instances where certain limited financial information comes in, but the rule in Alabama is it's not going to come in for the jury to consider.
Is it a mistrial if they look it up on the internet at night?
Judges constantly talk to juries about what they can and what they can't review. I can tell you from experience, though, many times juries unfortunately consult outside information. So if you're ever on a jury, make sure you don't do that.
Matt, thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.